All right. Welcome. Thanks of all. First of all, from CERT.LV and also ISACA Latvia for inviting me for a presentation, 30 minutes on my views that I have on privacy by design and Internet of Everything. You saw the presentation by Bruno this morning, and I will go a little bit beyond that. Well, first of all, I work for a company called SMALS. It's a French acronym, exists for more than 77 years, and is basically automating the social security in Belgium for the government. So we're a non-profit IT company. And we have awards on G-Cloud, and we work for eGov quite a lot. We're more than 1,800 people. Now, for privacy, it is a very important topic. I don't know, well, more and more I notice in the 23 years that I'm active is that people get more and more aware of the value of their personal data, and that's kind of interesting. We know that we share a lot of data with social networks, with a lot of companies, and without realizing, these companies have basically two main objectives. Not only that we spend money on buying things online, but also that we spend all of our time as much as possible on their site, which is kind of fascinating if you come to think of it. Actually, this morning I just mentioned to the president of ISACA Latvia, when I was walking here to this nice conference building, I saw two police cars. And in the police cars there were each time two officers, and they were working on their smartphone, all four of them. Which is kind of fascinating because I presume that even in Latvia, smartphones are not given to police officers, so I presume it's their own smartphone. Which is kind of fascinating to see that even they share a lot of information whilst being at work. And I don't think that anybody here in the room gets paid to do 6-7 hours of social media surfing every day, right? However, we do. Actually, I have a newsflash, and just when I came here, it is indeed, October is the cybersecurity month in Europe, and also in Belgium we've launched just this morning safeonweb.be with the credo, take back the internet. And they've launched just a video which I'm going to show you very briefly.
Meer dan 6 miljoen Belgen helpen elke dag onbewust cybercriminelen. En jij? Doe de test op safeonweb.be.
So it's in Dutch, but it says basically we wouldn't accept this in the real world. Why do we allow it online? Basically, all this behavior of sharing all this stuff, where it's happening. It's kind of funny. It automates, and only for the moment in Dutch and French. But I'm sure they will work on an English version as well. It is true, ladies and gentlemen, that our personal data is valuable, and it's kind of perceived as the new oil on the internet. It is true. We are valuable. I read an article recently that says, oh, your personal data is only worth $3.2 or 2.86 euro, which is kind of shameful. And they calculated based on some penalties that companies had to pay after they got hacked, and they lost a lot of data. But is that true? Who wants us to believe that our personal data is only worth 2.86 euro? That's kind of not true. So, privacy by design. Actually, privacy by design was developed and pushed into the format by a person in Canada, of all places, and she basically stated that there are 7 core principles which are very important to work privacy by design, meaning from the start, as soon as you have the idea, how to transform that into practice and make sure that it's embedded into the applications, into the systems that you develop. One is, of course, proactive. Not waiting until it happens. In the other sessions this morning, we hear that sometimes companies take a lot of time to react to breaches or warnings about this. Should be proactive. Preventative by preference, not remedial. It should be a default setting. In Belgium, we had a lot of fuss with the cable companies who basically said, well, from October onwards, we will launch commercials on TV based on your preferences. And I was like, wait a minute, TV commercials on our preferences? Yeah, it's a new technique and we can do that. And it's really nice because then you only see commercials that are for you. And the default option is, it's on. Very American. The default option is, I don't want personalized commercials. I just want the bland thing, and I'll decide if I want personalized or not. So basically the Privacy Commission said, no, can't do that. It's a wrong decision. It should be privacy by default, meaning the people have to opt in to have personalized commercials, which I think is good. It should be embedded into the design, and I'll come back to that later in my talk. Full functionality, it should be positive sum, not zero sum. We should not be the loser of this. We should be, as customers, as citizens, we should be winners in this and not just the victims or the so-called, well, people because we're so many and everybody's doing it, why not? Also the end-to-end life cycle element is very important. We focus a lot on the creation of private data, the reading and updating of privacy and personal data. However, and that's my personal experience, what we less encounter is the end game, deleting or archiving personal data. How do companies do that? How do they work with it? Simple example, I was privacy officer for 6 years, and one of the first questions that was asked is, okay, Mark, these are employees that have left us 6 months, a year ago, but we still want to use their data. Can we? And that's a very interesting concept. How do you protect the privacy of a person who cannot decide anymore? Because he's no longer in the company. He's no longer an employee. And that's the end-to-end game. And always I look as a person looking at security, privacy and audit from an audit perspective at the end-to-end game, beginning to end. And it's an interesting one, and we need answers to that. Visibility and transparency is, of course, an element, the openness, transparency about how you behave. The tech companies are changing, but it will take a while. Microsoft announced yesterday that they will invest billions of dollars in Europe to set up their own data centers because they know in Europe it's a different way of working than elsewhere in the world. And so they have to comply and be open about how they handle data from European citizens, rather than all the other ones. The one size fits all is over. And respect for user privacy, it's user-centric. There also I noticed that sometimes companies think, well, you should be happy it's for free. Otherwise we charge you. No, it should be user-centric and it's about reputation. The main benefits, of course, are obvious. It's about awareness, and I think a day like this is very important, and I applaud you to organize conferences like these to create and enhance awareness on privacy, on protection across organizations for citizens and for employees and clients. Positive impact, creating that positive vibe for everybody, that they trust the system. A keyword here is really trust. Do I trust this or not? And this is not a static thing. Consent is usually given once and then used and abused forever. What if we change it to dynamic consent? What if we use it over time? And it should be, if there are issues, they should be identified as early as possible and reacted upon. In the session just a moment ago about responsible disclosure, that is about, we mentioned this, we noticed something strange, we mentioned it, and there's little to no reaction by companies. That's kind of frightening. It's a cultural thing, I guess. And also, of course, legal obligations. I think everybody of us has heard about the EU GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, who's already active. Personally, I'm involved in that quest also in Belgium, in the government. And for me, there's not that much different. 80% already existed. It's good that it's back to the limelight. It's good that we reinforce it with novelty things, but the basic principles remain the same. At ISACA, we've done some research on this, and it is important. Now, you've heard a lot about Internet of Things, but basically that definition doesn't add up anymore. We have to talk more about Internet of Everything, like Bruno also showed you this morning. I don't consider myself as a thing, nor my cat, nor trees or things like that. We're not just objects. So, and it's about smart identification and linking it. And if you treat it as a thing, that's kind of already a statement stated by the company who's using you. Human and smart homes. Well, basically what you see is that we connect everything. We really want to connect everything, anyone, anytime, any place, anyhow. And that's kind of interesting to see how that works. Do we really want that? I mean, some people talk about the home as the final frontier. They really want to be on the inside. See what kind of washing powder you use, when you use it, how you use it, at what time. That's kind of going overboard in some way. But, you know, why not? Some people say, yeah, if I can get benefit out of it, why not? So how will this change the world? Well, by default, we will get more and more connected. And, you know, cars are being connected, medical devices get connected, people get connected, and the question is, this is of course a lot of work. We just a moment ago in the previous session on IP security cameras, which are connected but not always securely. And the question is, how do you handle that? How can we trust that these things do what they do when we ask them to do it? Or do we just not, as always, read the manual and just leave it as it is and leave it at the standard USD and password? And then we are surprised that somebody from, you know, somewhere in the world can look into my house and look at what I'm doing if I have a camera in the house. Most devices, however, will be B2B. So from privacy perspective, the battle is on business to business first, because they avoid the privacy issues, which is okay. But once they move to B2C, then they'll have to tackle that. So that's definitely important. The benefits are easy. If you do this correctly, operational efficiencies are there. There's a lot to do with everything to do with customer service, obviously, faster, better, more tuned. And of course, collaboration is also very important. It's connected. You get more wisdom, more intelligence from counting all these systems together. There's a lot of architecture being done, and it's not just from inside the company, it's also from a lot of external sources, by which Internet of Everything gets built up as a platform, as an infrastructure. And it gets integrated with core systems, and that's kind of interesting. Previously, I mean, we never thought we would connect really core systems to the internet. Now it's more like, why not? Question that you get. And people still do not understand the risks around it. And the risk element, the risk assessment, should be done by all stakeholders. And that's a very important concept. Are there standards? Not yet. There are many, maybe too many. And we will see some consolidation. But if we do Internet of Everything events with vendors, we get every vendor with their own stack. Yeah? There are some consortiums, but as you notice, sometimes it's Cisco and Intel and IBM for the industrial internet. Allseen has Microsoft, Philips, LG, and other ones. And these consortia change over time. Now, from a privacy point of view, what does it mean? And again, we've done some research on that with our volunteers. ISACA has 180,000 people running around, so that's kind of interesting to see how that works. And on Internet of Things, we see some interesting facts. First of all, 3 out of 4 believe that Internet of Things device manufacturers do not implement sufficient security and privacy. So 7 out of 10 say, no. We'll just buy it off the shelf, but it probably won't work. 6 out of 10 says the workplace use Internet of Things devices has reduced employee privacy. People feel that they get not just filmed on the parking lot, at the reception desk, but also more and more in hallways and other areas, in meeting rooms, public meeting rooms, for security reasons. 73% estimate medium to high likelihood of an organization being hacked through Internet of Things devices. Almost 3 out of 4. So these are statistics of people in their perception, their beliefs. So you can wonder how much we trust these things. And there are 3 types of risk: business risk, operational risks, and of course technical risk. And we focus sometimes on the technical risks a lot, which is easy. But the operational risks are a little bit more subtle, and business risk is definitely something high up at the board level. And sometimes the board is not aware of these risks. They're not informed correctly, or they're not informed in a language they understand. And there, I think, for all of us in the room, we have a challenge. A challenge to translate the technical and operational risks in a language that board members understand. That is also something that's very vital. Otherwise, they don't know, and subsequently, they cannot take decisions. Even though sometimes you can send, as some of the speakers did, they send an email to the CEO saying, I found this bug in your device that you produce and sell. CEO has no clue what this is about. So we have to create more awareness. We have a task as professionals, as experts. Ladies and gentlemen in the room, we are the elite. Just the fact that you're here and you're interested about it makes you the elite in security and privacy. People are watching you, are looking at you for expertise and for wisdom. We should do that translation exercise and not by default suppose that everybody understands what we do. So what does it mean for privacy? Is privacy that? Well, some tech companies want us to believe that. And for good reason, because it's their benefit. They have the billions of dollars in cash on their pockets, not us. It's not a problem as long as it's open. But the point is, privacy is far from that. Far from it. Because once people get attacked, once they get victimized, and they feel not happy about it, then they suddenly realize that they have a role to play. The story of a woman in Belgium who went to vacation in Australia and saw her own picture on a billboard in a marketing campaign was kind of shocking for her, because Facebook basically that has property of your pictures and they can market that. And it's kind of fascinating to see that she never thought that her picture, personal picture, would be used in a marketing campaign by a company across the world down under, but it did. Probably because most of the companies say, well, the risk is very low that a person from Belgium will go to Australia. However, underestimating security and privacy risk is a real big effort for companies. They have to be careful. Otherwise, they will lose the momentum and people will not buy into that. Remember all the Google Glass? Fantastic concept, but people got attacked even though the glass was off in bars, because people felt frightened when somebody entered the room with that kind of device. They're like, I don't want to be filmed by you, whereas you do. Well, I'm not doing it. How can you show me? People were physically attacked because this thing came in. Samsung did some mistake with the television, the smart TV, very smart, so smart, it was listening constantly what was happening in the room because it was waiting for the command to activate the TV. What it didn't say is that certain information was sent to Samsung headquarters. Of course, it was not true, but it did. Transparency is key, and we have to be careful about it. So in essence, if you got a computer inside something, doesn't mean what, it is something that is as vulnerable as a normal computer would be. And you would be amazed in how many devices computers are sitting in. And that's interesting. We love technology. I like technology. We love evolution. But it's always like, okay, and what does it actually do? And of course, it's fun. Sometimes you see these things like, okay, got it hacked. Road sign hacked. Cool. Because it's easy to do sometimes. Scary. So from a consumer perspective, there are a lot of benefits. But there's also a cost element to it. From a benefit perspective, it's about convenience, it's about service, it's about the collaboration ease to do, customization, it's about lower search costs, etc. But on the cost element, it's about, permissions. It's about that consent that we've given, and can we retract that consent? We always get on the website the two questions. Do you want us to share more information or more commercial information about our organization? Tick box 1. Most people say, yeah, sure. But the second tick box is the really dangerous one. Are you giving us permission to share that information with our partners? Define partners. Today, tomorrow, next year, in 5 years. What if the company who you've given permission to is acquired by a bigger company who has other partners? Does that consent still is valid or not? Interesting questions where sometimes a lot of people are talking about. But believe me, the fact that you've given consent is taken into equation in merger and acquisition discussions about the value of the company. So we are worth something, and that we have to realize. Now, from an organization perspective, this is also very interesting in a benefits and a cost perspective. From a company, it's about efficiency, it's about moving on, having that image of being modern and evolutionary and tech savvy. Customer loyalty. Actually, do you know that there are now chief persuasion officers in companies? That there are customer journey designers, profession that didn't exist until 5 years ago. Well, at least I didn't aware of. But they do exist because it's interesting. They want to invest in that. And the cost, of course, are, of course, the investment. And they have to invest in that security and privacy element. They have to think it through, not just from a legal perspective. I see quite often that organizations refer to legal as the group of people or people who will solve everything in privacy. Absolutely wrong. They're one of the stakeholders, one of the people who should be, but they're not the only ones. That's why we hate it that data protection officers are legal people. They shouldn't be. Legal is involved, but should not be a data protection officer because legal people are usually not involved in the implementation, in the operational side, and have no clue what's going on. Yes, they're good in the technical, legal aspects, but not in the technical IT implementation side. So we're kind of critical in, approving that. It's about personalization costs, it's about business intelligence, which is quite heavy as well. So it introduces a new way of collecting data, and it's massive. Internet of Everything generates information of everything, and it's massive data, and we're hoarding information. Who of us still keeps all their emails? Because we don't throw away, because we can. Storage is not an issue anymore. We can keep draft versions, we can keep calendar. I mean, the calendar is sometimes packed with attachments, which we are not aware of, but it was like 5, 6 years ago. Who deletes or archives their calendar after 3, 4 years? We don't have to. But the information that's in there is quite valuable. It's interesting, but if you leave the company, what happens with that information is something that most employees do not ask. They assume, and assumptions are very dangerous, that this information will not be consulted by other employees. But that's a very dangerous assumption. What if you're a customer? Same question. What if that information is still consulted? And that's why there's abuse potential. And there's a lot of discussions in the university level and science level about anonymization, pseudonymization, tokenization, all these technologies that are being used to help create trust that you can share it, and we will share that other information of you in a hidden, non-open fashion. But it's very delicate. I mean, there's always somebody who finds a loophole in turning it back into real information. It's kind of fascinating, but who can access that data? And I had a discussion on Monday. We were talking about the city of Antwerp, who wants to become also a city of things. Interesting, but who's giving consent? Are you giving consent if you're walking with your smartphone in the city and you go from shop A to B to C, and they're tracking that and nobody's asking your consent? What about that? Do you have to give that or not? And you can say, yeah, but Mark, I can always switch off my phone. True. But who's switching off their phone? If I walk in the street, I see more people glued on their screen than people just wandering around anymore, which is also kind of interesting. And how should the data be protected? So we have to wonder how data will be protected. We have to be careful and ask the right question. Who knows this app, My Permissions? Anyone? It's kind of a cool app. It's just an app, but every time you load up a new application, it will dictate if this new application installed will act on your behalf and, for example, send Twitter feeds without your knowledge. Knows your location and can use that to send it to partners and say, okay, Mark is now in Riga, send him some commercial stuff. Can read your inbox and your contacts. Can use your pictures and files. Can access your personal information. And the one thing that always bugs me is when I use this app and I install something, I can never say, okay, he can know my location, he can use my picture and files, but he cannot act on my behalf. You can't just click off certain parts of it. It's 0 or nothing, which means it's not privacy by design. It's a 0 or none. And it's creepy, huh? Is it okay to let a commercial company collect information about how I drive, where I drive? A lot of insurance companies are investing a lot in so-called behavioral analysis and linking insurance elements to your driving behavior, especially for young people. And it can lower your cost. And they can. But in such a car like this one, has 70 data capturing systems and 100 million lines of code. Who's reviewing that? Well, sometimes they do naughty things with that. Is it okay to let a commercial company, because let us believe tech companies are commercial companies, not non-for-profit, to collect information about when I'm not at home? And sometimes it can be this, which can be creepy, like that, something else on the phone or on the thermostat. Is it really okay that I'm letting a commercial company know how I work out, what my heart rate, my behavior is, where I run, how I run, with whom I run? Or can we get this? Can be hacked. There's even apps, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, nothing surprises me anymore, but there's even apps who collect information about how, where, and how you have sex. This is a spreadsheet. You just toss your smartphone, you activate it, you toss on your bed, and it registers, you know, the sound, the duration, the thrusts, the decibel peak, and you can, of course, and there's even better, you can share it with Facebook friends. And believe me, people do. That's creepy. So if you look at HAL 2000 from A Space Odyssey, yeah, we're getting there. But George Orwell was wrong. 1984 was not just an instruction manual, but George forgot something. George never thought that the people themselves would give all the information themselves to these companies. He thought that, well, with all the cameras, we would be, no, we're doing it themselves. That's something that he always forgot. It was kind of a new equation because we have the means to do it. And we like sharing stuff. We do. But we like it in a trustworthy fashion. So, do you have the right to know what companies are collecting and how are they using it? And, you know, a lot of people are hoarding information just for the sake of hoarding. And sometimes like, why does the weather company wants to know my inbox and my contacts? That doesn't make sense. That they know my location, sure. But all the rest doesn't make sense. So, my answer to this, end this, is something that I picked up from the World Economic Forum, which I think is very valuable. It's about the New Deal on data. We should own our own data. And in Old English law, we had 3 basic tenets. The right of possession. It's our data, not by terms and conditions just transferred to any commercial company. It's our data. And we have the right to protect that data, and we can decide what to do with it. We can remove it when we like it. Remove it. The right of usage. We decide how a company uses that information. You know, and if you're not happy with it, you can say you have to stop it. And of course, there's legal elements about invoices and stuff like that. But you cannot further use it anymore in your other activities. You cannot share it with partners anymore. The right of disposal. Archiving or removing is a right. It's a fundamental right. If you want to destroy it or remove it, you can do it. It's your right. It's your data, your pictures, your voicemails. And there's a new one that should be added, though. The right to anonymously share your information. We are pro-technology. We like the evolutions. We like sharing information, but not with our personal details in it. For example, in medical care, I can imagine that it's useful to share information about certain illnesses and share it for the greater good. But it's a right to share it anonymously. Difficult to implement, but not impossible. Yeah? So, 4 tenets that we should think of in privacy by design as well, from a customer-centric point of view. And applying it has advantages. It's about data quality. Believe me, if people do not trust the data, you know what they do? They keep on using it, but they start lying like hell. Doing weird things. What's the value of data that's worth nothing? You collect data, but it's worth nothing. So that's a good point. Also the complex, and we all know it, the terms and conditions, the 20, 50, 200, 5,000 pages that you have to read through, that you click, I agree. We should stop that. My message to lawyers is, stop with that kind of behavior. It doesn't work. We're not all law experts. You have to keep it to transparent disclosures. And Yahoo is doing a bad job right now. A really bad job. They're defending themselves in wording. Playing with words, I call it. Transparency is gone. Trust is gone. If you do things which I'm not aware of and I don't like it, you're out. And make it a positive part of the brand experience. I see a lot of people trying to do a positive part in the brand experience. We have COBIT, which you can use for privacy elements. We have our 7 enablers, which you can use. And 2 things are always important. The principal policy and frameworks are the starting point. However, culture, ethics, and behavior is very difficult to measure. I know. but not difficult, but not impossible. So applying privacy by design is not thinking about just technology controls or process controls, but also about social controls and organizational controls. I think it's essential we look at the big picture, end to end, not just technology. It's a bigger element, but it's necessary to gain and retain trust. Gaining trust is one thing, retaining it is much more difficult nowadays. 9 principles, very short, on privacy by design, very short elements. I think these are 9 criteria, and the website is on there, opensecurityarchitecture.org. Go to it, look at the design principles, and apply them. I know for security people, it's always weird to look at it like, ooh, yeah, but I want to restrict it. No, it has to be usable. People don't like restrictions. They want to use it, but with a defense-in-depth approach. And simple, not just flexible with all kinds of options. Look at the Google website. Simple. Simplicity counts. Just to end up, everybody wins. If we do this properly, everybody will trust you and continue to trust. Also, in terms of the new data economy, we support the new data economy. We believe in the new data economy in an open, transparent way, respectful. And if things go wrong, be open about it and handle it. Don't just try to muffle it up. And also sharing information, and the real information, not just the wrong information, is important as well. So by adopting a sound, transparent privacy by design approach from the get-go, providers can transform their ideas into what I call good practices, not best practices, but good practices, because they learn, it's dynamic, and gain long-term trust and value. And if you talk about trust and value from, then that's the definition of ISACA. So we do trust in and value from information systems for more than 40 years. So we know it's important to gain that trust from customers, citizens, employees. And I use the quote, the person from Norway, the professor from Norway mentioned it. Actually, I saw Bruce, so yeah, I use the same quote. So the weakest link is not technology. It's the people who provide the technology, who program it, who set it up, who configure it, who maintain it. Those are the weakest links. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marc. And we have time for one question, if any. During break, somebody maybe will ask you. Thank you.